Dear listener, welcome into Other People's Shoes, Season 17, entitled Dear. This season, we venture into emotional territories as we explore words left unsent through this intimate process of writing a letter that was never meant to reach its recipient. The raw, unfiltered authenticity that speaks volumes in these letters. These unrevealed stories, confessions, and reflections held within these letters until now are powerful. Welcome to Dear. Sincerely, Other People's Shoes.
That is right. Welcome
You've got mail.
Welcome in to Other People's Shoes. You know, I'm your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for joining me once again at the mailbox. Now, as I've already said in some past episodes, let me help you. My wife and I have recently moved into our brand new, freshly built, never, ever lived in before home. And with that, our mailbox is now literally across the street from our house. Now, I have to tell you, though, this road that we live on is called Table Rock Road. And there's a reason for that, because if you Google Table Rock, okay, maybe not right now, not in this exact second, when maybe you're done listening, or maybe throughout your day, you're like, hey, what was that place Neil was talking about again? Yes, Table Rock. If you Google that, you're going to see, I'm not kidding you, this is worth the Google. Like sometimes I say, hey, Google that, it's kind of cool. This is worth the Google. In fact, right now, as I sit in the Shoe Shack studios, I can look out the one window that we have, which I'm okay with, and I can see the sun coming up over said Table Rock Road. Anyway, back to our mailbox. That road is super busy. The old adage of you have to look both ways before you cross said street, yes, definitely applies. Wondering about you, if we go to that mailbox again, if we navigate like Frogger across the street, what letter would we find today? Well, lo and behold, we do have a letter to open. As I would say from Blue's Clues, look who got a letter. I wonder who it's from. Help me welcome in my new friend. She does have some, not devil, but maybe a flyer in her, and maybe even an eggle or eagle, depending on how you want to say it. Help me welcome in my new friend, Carrie. Carrie, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you.
Did you like the Table Rock, the Frogger reference?
Yeah.
Maybe a devil, maybe an eggle.
Yes. Eggle. Love it.
Not a New York Giant.
No, I think I'd be divorced if I was a Giants fan. I married into the Eagles territory. And when we moved back to New Jersey, that was a requirement, was that he's still gone to Eagles games. I said, fine. Those Philly fans or something else.
So we had an NFL football player, former NFL football player on our show. And his last game was in the old Veterans Stadium in Philly. Okay. So your husband might respect this story, truly. And the guy's name is Todd Marinovich. And Todd was towards the end of his career. He had done some drugs, and there's a whole chronicle of his story. The Raiders, or at the time he's playing for them, the LA Raiders even. So that tells you how long ago even it was. And he tells this story on our show of going to Philly in Veterans Stadium, and they're burning his likeness in effigy. And he said, I recognized and realized I don't like Philly fans.
Veteran Stadium was something fierce, let me tell you. I had been there in my college days before it got taken down. Even the new stadium, although it's so lovely, it is still that Philly vibe. We took our kids there, I guess it was last year. And, we're parking and there's like barbed wire and we're crawling through it and it's like raining and there's Philadelphia sludge up to our knees. And I'm like, this is Philly. And I love it.
Where did you go in school?
So I got my master's from UPenn in Philly.
Okay.
I went down there for school.
I don't think I'll ever go to a Phillies game unless they're playing a West Coast team. How about that? I don't think I'll ever go to an Eagles game unless they're, again, playing a West Coast team.
Yeah.
I have no desire to go to Philly. Listen, maybe to see the Fresh Prince. I mean, he was born and raised.
He was, yep.
I did have a Phillies hat for a long time. I served in a pastoral role in a church, and a friend of mine was working at our daycare. She's more like a sister than a friend, I should say. And she was struggling when she would come to my office. Is she talking to her friend Neil, or is she talking to Pastor Neil? So I actually did buy a Phillies hat for that moment. So I put on my Phillies hat. Okay, I'm Pastor Neil now because there's a giant P on the front of it. And then I would take it off when I was my mild-mannered Neil.
Yes, that's fantastic.
So today, no Phillies hats, just my
Okay.
other people's shoes hats. So just to help. All right. Well, help us with this. Speaking of things to help with, if we were to find you on a normal shuttling kids around day, or maybe a day in your office where maybe you have to be a little nicely dressed, who knows? Help us with this. What style of shoes might we notice you wearing?
There's 3 in my rotation. My work shoes are always wedges. I do dress up for work. And at home, it's either sneakers because I'm working out, or it's flip-flops all summer long.
So even in New Jersey,
Mm-hmm.
flip-flops all summer long.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's flip-flop season right now. I'm in it.
Well, I asked that because I've never been to New Jersey. We've had a number of folks on. We don't make it up there very often. Usually we kind of hop over, hop around, never really like hover there. I'm kind of scared of New Jersey. Hackensack, a little frightened.
Yeah, no, Hackensack's easy. That's easy.
Okay. All right.
Nothing to be scared of there. It's just a lot of hospitals and medical buildings now.
Well, they had the Hackensack Bulls back in the day. I'm thinking of Brewster's Millions. It's probably not a real baseball team.
Right. I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so. Anyway. I was maybe wanting his Millions because that's such a fun movie. Him and John Candy. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I haven't seen that
Pryor.
one. No.
But he's from New Jersey. So there we are. Made me think of that. Well, on to you. Help us with this. When you heard about us doing this letter thing, by the way, some people, we're almost done with our season, and some people are still emailing and reaching out saying, Neil, I don't understand it. Where did you think of this? And so I tell them the story and tell them the thing. And again, like we were talking about in the green room, June, I celebrated 25 years being out of high school, which to me was, where did that go? That was a long time ago. Like, I thought it was last week. Okay, maybe not last week. I thought it was a couple of years back. Okay, 99's not that far ago. Busting out the calculator because the math skills are lacking, clearly. It's really been 25 years. So again, if we were to find a letter that you wrote to someone, who might the letter be to?
You know, when I saw that prompt, when I was filling out all your forms and everything, I was like, this is a really interesting question.
All right, I got to stop you for a second. All of our forms, you don't have to make it in triplicate. It doesn't have to be notarized. Wow. All of our forms.
Form I filled out. I can't remember. It was a form. I had to do it. I do remember it. It's been a while. It took us a while to connect. Many forms, whatever it was. I remember being like, that's a really interesting question. So normally I go on podcasts because I'm a teen therapist and I talk about therapy and I talk about mental health and my books and all of that. But then I realized I tell people to write letters to themselves all the time or to other people all the time. And I was like, oh, I like this concept. And then I was like, what letter would I write? And I don't think I would have written it to anybody except to myself. When I was younger, I needed to hear a letter from my older self, if that makes sense. And I think sometimes that's so powerful.
It makes absolute sense. And that's what I was sort of alluding to in that moment with you and I just now in making reference to my high school in June when I was like, oh, and it really got me thinking as I looked at my senior picture that somehow I've saved. By the way, am I alone in that? I don't know. Somebody tell me.
I don't have mine, but I tossed everything from high school. High school was a rough time, but it gave me my career path. So, you know.
The idea for me, when I think about high school Neil, and it was 99, by the way. So it was.
I was 96.
Okay. So there we go.
Mm-hmm.
You were the senior that was probably punching me for my lunch money. Who knows? I don't know.
I just wasn't at school.
You're not a violent person, I feel like, but you are in New Jersey, so maybe.
Yeah.
What I was thinking about, even in my situation, and I only use me because it's an easy example, rather than if I talk about somebody else, it always feels like gossip. Going back to high school Neil, what would I tell him? I mean, it's the easy stuff, you know, hey, don't forget to invest in Amazon. Hey, Apple seems to be pretty cool. Maybe do something with them. On the emotional level, on the deeper, as I call it, a dolphin dive level, below the surface, way below the surface, what would I tell younger him? And so I posed that question to you, just, you know, scratch out my name with all the forms, maybe put your name in there. What do you tell her?
It was so interesting that we're having this conversation because I had a very similar conversation in therapy last night with a high school student who was just really struggling. And I talked about my high school past, which I normally don't in session. It has to be a really good reason for me to bring up me because it's not about me. But, you know, one of the things I was saying was that sometimes it feels like everything is crashing down and everything is falling apart, but it's not. Like you have so many years after high school. You have so much time. This is such a blip on the radar. You know, especially when we talk about high school, it's 4 years. And what your life is like then is not how your life is going to be like in your future. And if you think that, well, I can't do high school and I'm failing and, I have no friends and everything sucks, that's not how your future is going to be. High school is this weird bubble. It's not real life. Like it's this weird 4-year strange dynamic, and it doesn't predict anything. When I was in high school, I really struggled in school academically. I didn't realize till I was 40 that I was dyslexic. But I really, really struggled in school. I thought I was stupid. I just assumed I was really stupid. And it wasn't until college when I started taking psychology classes and social work classes where I was like, wait, I'm good at this. I understand this. I just don't understand history or math or Spanish. That was like my whole identity back then was like, well, I must be stupid. You get those messages also from teachers and from parents who are like, why aren't you studying harder? Well, at one point, it just doesn't matter. I'm just going to check out. So I think being able to go back and tell myself high school is not a predictor of future success. You don't take a test well, it doesn't mean you're stupid. And unfortunately, I think that's a message that we send to these kids all the time.
Well, I too, being dyslexic, I wasn't 40. I was in 4th grade, so it does have a 4 in it. I remember the first time it sounds like we're in a similar era, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Maybe just a few years ahead of me, not insinuating you're old or decrepit. No, I don't want that. I don't want that insinuation. You're my brother's age, just to help. And he's only 2 years older than I am. Of course, I just probably tipped off your age. So, I remember the first time getting pulled out to go to resource.
I did too.
And that's what I said, probably similar era. I remember thinking to myself, no one else has to go to resource. Why do I have to go to resource? And in my school, we were a military base school. So money was always tight. Schools in general never really seemed to have a lot of money. But I do remember the first time in 4th grade, we had whiteboards, the dry erase boards. And we went away from the chalkboards, which was cool because I hate the feel of chalk even to this day. I was a bad kid. And I think because I was so emotionally, and there was a lot of them, I didn't know what to do with all of them. I mean, it was like a party and they were all wanting to hang out, party hard. And I was like, no, be nice emotions. And they weren't. And my dad was gone a lot being in the Marine Corps. And I didn't understand that. I didn't get that. I thought that was my fault somehow. I feel like we're in session. So if you want to charge me, just Venmo me my fee. My teacher, she did the name on the board and you got to check. You missed recess and the whole thing. And I remember going up to write my name on the board one day, like I did probably the 50th previous days before that. And I wrote in Sharpie my name. And she's like, Neil, no, that's permanent. And I looked at her and I said, well, you and I both know it'll be here tomorrow. It was in that moment, like you talk about, that you do feel like you're stupid. You do feel like, why am I being isolated? I wanted to be with the few friends I had. I wanted to be with them and I couldn't understand it. And again, nobody came alongside to say, hey, young Neil, here's why you need to go to resource.
Right.
They did throw out the word, which even to this day, I'm thankful for Google. I can't spell dyslexia. I'm not trying to be funny. Truly, I can't. Like I start writing it in and Google knows what I'm saying because I've written it a few times.
Yeah.
Help me walk through that for you. What was the traumatic point or maybe the pain points in those areas for you that the younger you would love to hear now as an adult? Like, hey, Carrie, you're good. You made it.
After years and years of, being pulled out to resource room, of basically being in every, low class, of every teacher just kind of looking at you like you're dumb and all of that. By the time you get to high school, for me, there was this point where I just stopped trying. I was like, well, if I'm stupid and if I'm not going to succeed in school, then I'm just not going to go to school. And that's where my life of cutting school and partying in New York City all the time came in. And I really felt incredibly lost. I'm like, well, there's just no point in this. Life is just going to suck. I'm never going to be successful. And I think that was a really important time. And luckily it was close enough to where I did get into college. Don't take anyone's money. You're going to go somewhere. So I got into college and my parents were like, just go to college. Just like, go, you need a change. And luckily it was college that really kind of saved me in all of that, where I met great friends, where professors actually treated me like I was smart and I had something important to say. I was doing well in class and I was like, oh my gosh, wait, I might actually have a future. Maybe I shouldn't have been partying that much in high school. I don't know. So I guess it didn't really negatively impact me. I feel okay about it now, about my whole childhood of not being smart and all that, because all these teachers who thought I wasn't even going to graduate high school, who never predicted I could even go to college. I have my master's from UPenn. Like I did it. Wasn't easy, but I did it. I think to be able to tell that high school self, don't throw it all away. Don't try to throw it all away. It's going to be okay. Don't just give up.
But I always wonder about that, the flip side of that coin, if you will. If I go back in the DeLorean and I pull up at South Medford High School, go Panthers, by the way, Panther, Panthers. Yes, we are. Got to get that in. But I jump out and I find maybe freshman year or sophomore year Neil. First off, I'm probably socking him in the face because he's kind of a tool still. Outside of that, if I don't create the violence that I always envision, and I do tell him the things that I think would most benefit him, not again financially, the dolphin dive, the emotional stuff, I don't know if he believes me. Is that accurate for you, do you feel like?
I think if anybody would have given me that advice or told me, I think I would have listened to that one person. I do. And I think that's why I did what I did as a living. I really felt like somebody needs to be giving these kids some positivity, some direction, and some help and guidance. So I do think that if anybody would have been like that positive voice, I would have wanted to believe them. So I think I would have latched on to that.
I want to say that I would. I really want to say that I would, but I don't know. I'm wondering about that for you. Again, I think there's so many things in life that become a catalyst, that become that kind of rocket fuel. When you look back even in your high school career, and maybe even that's when the catalyst happened, was in college, and you started to really discover there's a ton of generational kids and even now adults that are still carrying around the Trapper Keeper and the baggage of life and the gym bag, the Letterman's jacket that they seem to not be able to put down. Somebody has labeled them, marked them in some respect, that they're, again, damaged goods. All they do is belong on the island of misfit toys. How do you reach them? And are they still reachable?
They're definitely still reachable. I don't know, there's not a formula of how do you reach them. So much of it is just about connection and hearing them and coming from a place of not judging, but being able to support. I'm in my office all the time, and a lot of parents will say to me, you're giving them the same advice that we give them, but they listen to you and not to us. And I said, it's a relationship thing. I can't put my finger on it. I just get them and they know it. Kids could see through nonsense. A lot of therapists struggle with the teenage population. You really need to get them.
I've been in youth ministry since I was 19. So helping out teens. I remember somebody at church actually making that exact statement. They said, Neil, you're a youth guy. You'll always be a youth guy. And I finally asked her one day, because she said it a few times. And I mean, I know what that definition means to me. I feel like oftentimes in our society, we use a word or we use a phrasing because we hear it and we're like, yeah, I like that. I'm going to keep using that. And then we realize the definition because we went to the dictionary, Webster's, or we go to Google and we're like, oh, I've actually been using that incorrectly. So for you, what gives you that passion to continue to help? I don't know. I've never been a therapist, although some people have accused me of that on the show. I've given therapy, which makes me feel a little bit good. What challenges you to keep doing that type of therapy? It's hard work. Hey, it's not Joe picking up the trash cans. That is hard work too. It's not cleaning teeth. That seems like hard work. Those pedicure people? No, thank you. It also seems like hard work.
Yeah, it is hard work. It's definitely hard work. But what keeps me going is that I got into this because it's almost like I needed me in my life when I was younger. So I got into it for that, to give those kids something that I needed, I lacked. And now I keep going. I work a lot of hours. I don't need to work a lot of hours. My practice is great. I have 2 books. I speak, all of that. Keep doing it. Like last night, I have a kid come into my office and her world is falling apart, or at least she thinks it is. And at the end, she feels like she has an action plan and that she can continue on. We have a massively high rate of suicides in this country with our teens. And if I'm able to help those kids hang on and not go down that path, I'll do it all day, every day.
I don't like suicide. I know that seems to be an obvious thing, maybe an obvious statement. Nobody does. Mm-hmm. And I might throw a little rocks here in the moment. It seems like a lot of people say they don't like it either. They agree with me. I'm like, cool. But how do we fix it?
Yeah.
So, Carrie, if I somehow gave you the power to fix it, how do you fix it in your mind?
If only there was one simple answer, there just isn't. There are so many foundational issues that are happening right now. There is so much pressure. I mean, one thing, if I did have a magic wand, I would take away all social media in a heartbeat.
That seems to be a common theme.
I would do it for my kids. I would do it for myself. I would do it for everyone. I would just take away social media. Unfortunately, I don't think I will ever have that power. So it's here to stay. So then I have to talk about it a lot and how you're comparing yourself to people's fake lives and you can't live up to someone else's fake life and all of that nonsense. That doesn't matter because it feels so real to them. So I think social media is a huge culprit of it. But I also think we have really gotten away from just foundations. Kids aren't sleeping. That plays into your mental health dramatically. You don't make good decisions when you're sleep deprived. So when you're sleep deprived, you may really think your world is completely falling apart and there's no point. And, I talk about physical foundations a lot. I talk about a bunch of them. I talk about being hydrated. I talk about sleep. I talk about eating well. I talk about exercise, meditation. We've gotten away from all of this. People are living in these homes. They're grabbing food and going up to their bedroom and eating. We've lost a sense of family units. We've lost a sense of community. We've lost a lot because people are so isolated. They're so isolated, yet there's so much around them and they feel isolated. So I don't think that answered your question, but that's where my mind goes when I talk about like this generation and their high rates of suicide and their huge rates of anxiety. I've never seen anxiety like this in my 25 years of practice.
So I'm going to lean into that. Your 25 years of practice.
Yeah.
You obviously see the suicide stats. They're not going down. Am I hearing that correctly? In your experience, in your research, they're not going down. They're only getting worse.
Yes.
Okay. I don't often get political because it seems silly. And I'm sorry if you're a political person. I do think politics are dumb. I really do. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of energy. Fire them all. We'll figure it out. Just saying.
Yep.
Especially those people in Congress that seem to do nothing but yell at each other and want to fire people and impeach people. Tired of that. And maybe that's where my anxiety builds. It's like we have these amazing leaders that do nothing. All right. I'm done with my soapbox. Cleansing breath. We're okay. It frustrates me. It feels like there's two alternatives for kids today. And maybe I'm making it too simple or too simplified. I'm hearing kids take their lives, which is terrible. Or the flip side of that coin is it feels like, or they act out. And usually they act out in a dramatic way. Let's go to a school where there's elementary school kids and shoot them. I'll feel better after that and then take my own life then. And then the rest of us are left with the aftermath. Going back to our era, you and I, in some respects, grew up in the Columbine era.
That happened when I was in college. I remember.
Yeah, that rattled my world all
Yeah,
the way
that
out
was
here in
crazy.
Oregon. All the way
I
out here
remember
in
watching
Oregon.
it on TV. That was absolutely like nothing we've ever seen before in our lives.
Right. And then just up the road from me, in that same kind of 90s era, late 90s era, high school in Thurston, Kip Kinkle. So it even happened in Oregon. It's happened in 50 other states. It just seems like, and it's happened at colleges. I mean, Virginia Tech was a victim of that as well. It seems like that's kind of the alternative. It's teens are killing themselves or they're going out and killing other teens in a dramatic way at schools because schools are so awful to them. Bullies are mean to them. I just want to gather them all together and give them a hug and say, there's another way.
There's another thing that they're doing, which you're missing, that I want to bring up.
Yeah, please.
You have suicides, you have kids acting out, and then you have massive overachievers who are putting the weight of the world on them. We are seeing a bunch of perfectionists. I have to get a 95 or above, unless my world is going to fall apart. They are a ball of stress. They are doing 1,000,001 activities, all to feel like they are going to be okay. And it's not healthy. It is not healthy, the amount that our children are overscheduled. It is not healthy, the amount that they feel the pressure of getting into a quote unquote good name college. That's another issue that we're having. And that's why anxiety is going through the roof. One of the reasons.
I just wish it was as easy as there's a solution. We have a solution. I'm grateful for people like you because you're helping parents navigate that tumultuous time. Have you ever had parents, and again, I know you can't violate because of HIPAA, and I'm walking delicately here when I ask this. Have you ever had parents come back and say, what can I do better? How can I be better?
Oh, absolutely. And they're such fantastic parents who are willing to be vulnerable and say, like, I don't know what I'm doing.
I'm sure there's a parent right now that might be listening. We'll call him Zach just for sake of argument's sake. Zach seems like a fun name to use. Let's use that. So let's say Zach comes to you and says, listen, I got little Timmy here. We don't know what to do with him.
Mm-hmm.
What tips would you tell us to do with him that maybe would help us be successful in session, but at home?
So one of the things I tell parents a lot is when kids are in middle school and high school, they come home with a lot of emotion and they kind of dump in their safe spot. You don't need to react to everything. So you don't need to react when they give you an attitude, when they eye roll you, when a door slams, because they're dealing with their own emotions. It's not about you. It's not about you. And if you let that go, it doesn't mean you're raising rude, entitled children. It means you're just giving them some space. And I think that is so important for parents to remember. That alone, that causes so many fights when a kid comes home and the parent's like, how was your day? And the kid's like, fine. And then the parent's like, what's the matter? Why do you have attitude? And then it just starts this huge fight. And it's like they just came home from school for hours where they're trying to be this person that they're trying to be accepted and trying to do well in school and all that stuff. And then they come home, they don't need it from you. Take a step back, give them a little bit of space. That's one of the things I always talk about. And the other thing I always talk about is like, you need to connect with your kids. You need to just sit down and talk with them and be like, hey, what's new in your life? And listen to them without judgment. Listen to them without constantly trying to solve their problem. Just listen. I tell parents all the time, bite your tongue.
You mentioned your book and writing it. Would high school you ever think of yourself as an author?
Oh my gosh, no. No. And it's funny when you talk about trying to spell dyslexic and all of that. There have been times when I have 2 books, Mental Health Uncensored, 10 Foundations Every Parent Needs to Know. And then I have a workbook for the teens based on the same thing. And there are times when I write my book, especially if I'm home by myself, spell check says it's in red, it's wrong, but it's spelled so poorly that spell check can't even give me what it is. So I either have to change the word or I have to call one of my kids or my husband and be like, how do you spell this? But oftentimes I change the word.
I was using a word the other day and my wife actually asked me, she said, what does that mean? And then I used the other phrase, well, sometimes in life we just need to burn the ships. And she's like, what? What is it? What does that mean? Like Cortez, you burned the ships so they wouldn't go back home. And she goes, where did you get that? I do. I love the fact that you're dyslexic. You can't describe dyslexia unless you really have dyslexia, I think.
Yeah.
Trying to understand dyslexia is trying to describe a sunrise to Helen Keller. And people don't like that.
But I get it because a lot of people just assume dyslexia is like, oh, you read things backwards or letters are backwards. No, like I can't decode words. I can't spell. I can't break down new words. I can't like pronounce them. Like it's so much more than that. I don't say anything backwards. At least I don't think I do. There's so many forms of being dyslexic.
And I don't think people realize that when you go to write something, the panic that comes over. I had a guest actually say, and it was kind of a high profile guest, and they wrote me back and said, I'm not even sure what you said here. Please forgive me. I don't know what you're trying to get. And man, I read that over and I remember prior to sending the email and reading it, 1,000 times. And thankfully MacBooks and iPhones have made it so you can hear it. I mean, once I hear it, I can pick out, okay, I did forget that. That word is missing. I must have heard that email probably at least 50 times or so. I was like, okay, good to send. All right. And then for the guest to say that, I was crushed. If teens are feeling crushed, if parents are feeling disconnected, if we're just going to make it through the 4 years, like you said, the blip on the radar, and Johnny and Susie and Bobby and JoJo are on their own. Okay, I've done my job. I'm good. I don't have to parent any longer. What's the danger in that? Do you feel like?
Yeah, they're not done growing. You're still parenting. You're parenting for a lifetime. It doesn't stop because college is hard. College is a whole nother bag of issues. And we have to remember, by the way, kids' brains are not fully developed till around 25. They need help. They need guidance. You can't just be like, okay, and you graduated high school, bye-bye. They need more. They really need more.
But you also talk about the challenges of writing your book, the dyslexia. What was the hardest part for you and then the most rewarding part of that process for you?
The hardest part for me, and this might sound really weird, probably because I'm dyslexic and all that, like I get right to the point. I don't use a lot of language. I'm pretty short with my responses, especially with emails. People are like, you're like a one-line email person. I'm like, oh, I know. So when I'm writing my book, it originally was like really, really short. And I was like, oh, I actually need to like pump this up and fluff it up. Like this isn't a book. I felt like all my information was there just because I'm very to the point. I'm very blunt. And this book is written so people just read it, get it, and could automatically implement steps into their life. So that was the hardest thing for me, was to be able to go back and really to add and add and add. And that was a struggle. And the most rewarding part was to be able to have it in my physical hand and be like, wow, I actually did this. And to have my kids read it. My one daughter, they have to read books over the summer. And then September, they come in with their book list of what they read. And the teacher said to me, she goes, I didn't realize you were an author until your daughter wrote your book on her summer reading list. And I was like, oh, yeah, I am. I am an author. And that just sounded so cool to me.
No, I get it. People recently come to the house, walk through. People are all excited about seeing our new house. And it is cool. Let me tell you, it is cool seeing a brand new, freshly built house. People get excited about that. So we took some people out. My Shoe Shack studio is about, 6 to 10 feet away from the house. So it's a separate room, separate area. I can be as loud as I want. This lady came out. She knows my wife, and she came out looking at Shoe Shack Studios, and she's like, "Wow, there's a lot of stuff in here. There's a lot of stuff to look at. It's kind of cluttery. Oh, okay. And then she points over to the desk. Oh, is that where you do your what is it? What is it called again?" And I said, "My podcast." And she said, "Oh, I've heard of those. You do those?" And I said, yeah, for like 5 years now, I've done it. And she goes, wow. I've never met a podcast host. Wow. That's exciting. We're not any different. To your point, we are different.
Yeah.
We've created something. Now, granted, book, podcast, similar. A lot of creation, a lot of thought, a lot of time goes into it. There is a little sense of achievement, a little sense of pride that comes in that.
Yeah. There's a huge sense of pride and achievement that comes with that. Absolutely.
And again, I go back to you in high school. Would your high school you even fathom a book writer?
No, never, ever, ever. It's funny. I always joke and I say that, my high school teachers would have bet their retirement fund on the fact that I would have never even graduated college, let alone go to an Ivy League for my master's. No one believed that I could do anything.
I love that about you, that it sounds like you're trying to be that lighthouse, that beacon to say to this younger generation or this current generation even, listen, they're not all right.
Yeah. So I actually have a sign in my office. It's in my waiting room. And the sign says, "Prove them wrong." And I think that's something that everybody needs to remember. These other people are not you. Just prove them wrong. Do you?
Because so many times, maybe that can be the rocket fuel.
Yeah.
To prove somebody wrong. There is a little bit of an arrogance that comes with that. I'll show you.
100%.
So I want to ask you a question involving your kids. Do you find that you're still a voice that can speak into their life, or how does that work? Because again, you're with kids all day long. You're experiencing that dynamic of you're helping Susie and JoJo and all these other fun friends that you have. Do your kids ever feel like, "Mom, we're not in session. Stop. Hashtag you're over"?
Such a great point. And it's been something that, especially as my kids get older, that I've personally struggled with, is that I am not their therapist. I am mom. And just like all those other kids that come into my office, when their parents are like, I tell them the same thing and they don't listen to me. But when they hear it from you, they listen. Great. But my kids hear it from me as mom. It's always that struggle. I am not their therapist. I have a different relationship with them. I am mom. Because sometimes I'll make them do my workbook. And I'm like, do my workbook. That way you start drinking enough water and exercising and meditating, doing your friend circles and everything. It's a very different dynamic. What I am able to do, because I do know teens and, I'm with them all day, is that I hear what teens constantly complain about regarding their parents. And I try very hard not to do that at home. Again, as a parent, when I'm like, the garbage needs to go out. Why didn't the garbage go out? I get it. It's hard as a parent as well. And then I'm also able to bring that into session because I get the parents who are frustrated. I get when they lose their mind and say things they don't mean. I get it. So for my kids, I am just mom. And, we make many jokes where, I'll ask my kid, hey, how was your day? And they're like, fine. People pay to talk to me. You get it for free. But we joke because I get it. I'm their mom.
I don't know if you ever did this. You made the coupon books of old for Mother's Day or maybe Father's Day or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. This coupon's good for one free hug. This coupon's good for one dishwasher unloading. I wonder if you made some coupons for your kids and you're like, listen, this coupon's good for one free session. I won't be your mom. Yeah. I'll be therapist. She's really good. She's really fun. Right. Whatever you say here stays here. Confidentiality is key. This is a safe room. They're like, well, I wrecked a car last week with Joe. Okay, I'm going to have to talk to your mom about that. For you and your work, I would imagine, as you've already talked about, very rewarding. It's great that you can kind of be a dual role person. You're walking that experience with your teens as well. You're helping teens, so you have that empathetic heart for them, but you also have that empathetic heart for the parents. How are we as parents getting it wrong? You mentioned already the fact that we don't listen. What are some other ways we can be better parents for our teens? Again, asking for my friend Zach, not for me. Not at all. My friend Zach wrote that in. He's like, hey, I know you're going to be meeting with your good friend Carrie. Help Zach out in this moment, if you wouldn't mind.
I'm going to help Zach out because an interesting trend has kind of happened with parenting. We swung from the generation of the kids go out all day, we have no idea where they are, and then they show up at home for dinner, to this generation of parents now who are so fearful of what may go wrong in their kids' lives that they are on top of them. I have never seen so many kids not allowed to drive places after they get their license because, well, no, it's just too far. What do you mean it's too far? Your kid got a license. The state of New Jersey said they could drive. Let them drive. They're tracking them everywhere they go and then asking questions. They're checking the speed of how fast they're going in their cars. They are so on top of them. These kids can't breathe. And more importantly, these kids are not learning to problem solve. The moment a problem happens in school, the kids are on their phone texting their parents. Susie was mean to me. What should I say? And the parents are texting right back. Oh my gosh, you need to tell her this, this, and this. And we think we're helping as parents, and we're not. You're taking away life skills. I have so many kids in high school whose parents are afraid to let them use the stove. They're going to burn down my house. They're able to use a smartphone. They're not going to burn down your house. And if they do, that's going to be quite the learning lesson. But you need to let your kids do things. They're going to fail. They're going to fail and they're going to learn from it. If we constantly put them in this bubble and constantly do everything for them, it's not going to go well.
Well, Zach doesn't like what you said there. He just texted and said, that is terrible advice.
Tell me why, Zach.
He's asking me to take that out of the episode. So
tell me why.
Well, he said that Live 360 is a great way to keep his kids safe.
Oh, talk to me about that false sense of security and how it's actually keeping your kids safe.
He told me that he doesn't forbid his daughter to go to places that are too far. He doesn't do that per se. He does say you need to make sure you're not taking that road at night. That's just being safe. You haven't driven that very long.
And how do they gain in the experience unless they actually do it? It's scary as a parent to let go, but that's how they gain experience. And it's hard as a parent to let that go. I get it. I have a driver too. And I hold my breath every time that boy gets on the road. But that's how we gain experience.
Again, that's Zach. That's not me. I'm fine. I'm the perfect parent. Yeah. My daughter's good.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch Toy Story? Do you ever watch any of those?
Of course.
Okay, just checking. I didn't know if it made it out to New Jersey. Maybe
Is that even a question?
Maybe the bootleg copy. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. 'Cause things in New York and New Jersey, probably not real stuff. Anyway, probably the hardest moment in Toy Story for me was seeing Andy go off to college and all the toys on the porch. I feel like that wasn't Andy in the moment for me. I put my daughter in the spot of Andy. I crossed out Andy's name and I said, recast. Here's Adia. Maybe not going off to college, but I remember the very first night she drove on her own when she got her license. We were at Olive Garden. It was a great family event. It was her birthday. There she goes on her own. And I remember standing there with my wife saying, I remember dropping her off at preschool for the first time by herself. I remember taking her to kindergarten the first time by herself. I remember walking her into first grade, second grade, third grade. Fourth grade, she's like, I can do it, Dad. I know where I'm going. Fifth grade, same. Sixth grade, so on and so on. If she makes it to her senior year, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, I'm not ready for that. How do I get ready for that as a parent? Help me. I mean, help my friend Zach, not me. I'm good. Again, I'm fine.
I'm going to help Zach. So you have all these amazing, wonderful memories of our children. For some reason, as parents, we kind of think like, oh my gosh, as they grow up, it's done. It's not. You have so many more amazing, wonderful moments ahead. They just look different. It's going to be those moments of you hugging them when they go off to college. It's that moment of watching them maybe graduate. It's that moment of having dinner with them before they get married. You have so many wonderful memories to come. They're just growing up. It just looks different.
And I know that. I mean, Zach knows that. In Toy Story, much like, again, using that as our analogy in this moment, it wasn't so much that Andy was growing up for me. I mean, that was part of it. He no longer needed the toys.
Are you thinking that he no longer needs Zach?
Maybe.
He'll always need Zach, just in different ways. When they're young, they need us. Do a lot of physical stuff for them. Like you're carrying them, you're changing them, you're putting down for bed, you're feeding them. And as they get older, that all looks different. And as they continue to get older, they need us for that emotional support. They need us to be that rock that they can always come back to. So it just changes. So I get that. Like it's so hard because the visual was they left all the toys and they walked away. They don't leave the parents and walk away. The relationship just continues to look different. It continues to grow.
It just feels like Zach is saying, again, not me. It just feels like they're walking away. And that's hard. I mean, again, maybe Zach, And maybe I'm in this too. So Zach maybe can set aside for a second. I don't like people walking away. I don't like feeling like I might not see that person again. And I think that's going full circle, perhaps, bring it all in. I think that's why suicide is so hard for me.
Yeah.
And I made this statement one time. Believe me, we've had the teen suicide talk. That's not something we stay away from. You know, some shows might. We don't. We go right into that. We'll walk into that darkness. And we've walked through that darkness with folks. But I did make the statement one time, if you have an experience with this or maybe some expertise in this. I made a statement one time, and I don't regret it because I'm still working that out, as they would say. I feel like suicide is the most selfish act anyone could ever do. Am I wrong to have that thought in your mind?
Yes and no. So yes, it is. They are leaving so much turmoil behind. They are ruining everyone else's life. Like, people will not get over that who were immediately impacted. On the flip side, they are not thinking in that moment that that is a selfish act. They are thinking it is a unselfish act because they are saving everybody from them.
You weren't kidding about your short answers. I thought there was more there.
That's my short answer.
Gotcha. I love it. It's fine. I think that's the struggle I run into with, suicide in general, but specifically teen suicide. They can't think beyond the moment. And again, not fully developed brain. It totally makes sense. We know that, again, maybe in our head, but in our heart, there's a gigantic road of disconnect there. Grand Canyon sized disconnect. It hurts me when I see teens hurting and they don't want to do anything about it, and they just want to sit and soak and live in the misery. It's like, come on, you're more than that.
Mm-hmm.
More than that. If a teen maybe picks up the letter to mom and dad or to younger you, what would be your PS to this teen who might pick up your letter and read somebody else's mail, which is kind of a little bit exciting. And it's like the diary of old, like older sister's diary. Oh, Brandy likes so-and-so. Ooh, that's so sweet. I can't wait to tattle on her about that. You could tell I was the youngest.
What would I say as like a PS to my letter?
Yes.
I think I would say, like, find your passion. Find what you love. So in my book, it's interesting because I never thought I wrote a letter to myself. And then I'm on this show and I'm going, wait, I think maybe I did by accident and didn't realize it. I talk a little bit about finding your passion and finding like what you love in life and how important that is. That's my regret when I look back, is that I didn't join more activities or I didn't say yes to these other experiences. I don't know. I think I was probably afraid of like, well, what are people going to think? You're afraid to put yourself out there, but it's those experiences that are just so important and that they build you up and they give you this passion. I wish that I found yoga in high school. That would have been amazing. I wish like I got into hiking in high school. That would have been amazing. Like these things that like I love. I didn't look for passions in high school. I was just sitting there in school and I was bored. So I think that PS is like, look outside the box. And that's what I do a lot in my work too. I'm like, what's your passion? What do you love? You need to have something that you love. Many times you're going to ask yourself, what's the point?
Yeah, I love that. To find the passion, find that thing. I say quite often, the thing that makes you come alive.
Yeah.
What's that one thing when you think about it that you really come alive in? Absolutely. So help us with this, Carrie. Where can folks get the book? Where's the best place? And then if they want to maybe reach out to you on the socials, I know we talked about it. We threw rocks at it, which is fun to do. Sadly, we do use it as a way to connect with folks. In a good way and in a positive way and maybe not an addictive way. Zach is not good at that sometimes. He probably needs some help putting his phone down. I slap it out of his hand quite often. But in any event,
we all do. It's designed to be addictive.
Where can people connect with you and all those fun things?
My books are on Amazon. I have Mental Health Uncensored, 10 Foundations Every Parent Needs to Know. And then I have Mental Health Uncensored, 10 Foundations Every Teen Needs to Know. And it's a workbook for teens. So those are where my two books are. I am on all your socials at Carrie Cooper Holistic Therapy. You can connect with me there.
Awesome. I want to say thank you so much for giving us some moments today. I'm really glad we got to reconnect. People don't realize the journey and the struggle of trying to get guests and time zones and all the schedules and
time zones.
It's a tricky business. And I don't think people realize that when they get into podcasting. It'd be great if everyone was on the same time, same areas. That's what makes it unique and diverse in my mind, because we get people from all walks of life in all parts of the country and all parts of the world, really, even now. So anyway, I just want to say thank you so much for giving us some moments and some practical stuff that I really feel like people can take away today. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I had a great time.
All right, guys and gals, kids and campers alike, that is it. That is all. That is our show today as we nicely fold up the letter and put it back in the envelope and maybe set it on the bookshelf. Because that's probably what you'll do, right? You've heard it, you've listened to it. You're like, okay, Neil, I'm good. I can now move on to 2, 3, 4, and 5 things on my list today. Okay, fine. I get it. Before you go, before you just set it all aside and never, ever, ever remember this again, I want to ask you a question. Do you have a teen in your life? So that's a closed-ended question in our business. That's a yes or a no. Okay, so answer that, yes or no. If the answer is yes, which I think for some of us it is a yes still, what did you hear and what will you do different now as you walk into the danger zone of teenage life? Maybe you're a grandparent listening right now and you're like, listen, my teens are gone. They're old like you, Neil. They're older. Maybe you have a grandchild that is in that sphere and in that arena. What are you going to do different as the grandparent? Or maybe you're like some who aren't blessed enough to have or haven't been fortunate enough to have kids. Is there somebody in your life that you can put this in their ears and say, hey, listen to this? Don't just set it on a shelf and forget it. Food for thought. Remember this too as we get out of here. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to connect with us, you, of course, can do that on our social medias and our website, opspodcast.com. Until next week, when we walk in other people's shoes.